Welcome to the Slim CD presentation of hosted payment pages and secure sessions. Here's a little information about our company. I've covered another slide, so I'm going to skip that and move right into the content. The hosted payment page is a page that's hosted on the Slim CD servers, and it allows you to integrate your web and or POS applications into a page that can collect cardholder or check data for you, so that you don't have to have the data flowing through your own payment application or shopping cart. You can customize the design and graphic elements on the page. You can add fields to the form for display or data entry. They can be display only. You can enter data in them. You can make them a variety of input styles, typable, pull-down menus, etc. They can be preloaded with customer-specific data per session, so a particular customer might have an amount and a customer ID and a name, address, email, etc. You can preload that, or you can prompt for it and have the customer enter it themselves. You can also create a multi-use page, such as a donation page, where the page is designed to be used by multiple consumers, such as in a donation page where you might type in the amount and type in all the rest of the cardholder information and charge the card. The pages will actually call web service functions on the host if you'd like, such as a post back to another server that loaded the page to complete a shopping cart transaction. Alternatively, a point of sale system or a web system can call out to the hosted payment page and inquire about the status, and we'll cover all that in this email. The form itself can also be designed to send emails to the merchants or to the customers, and thereby giving them a receipt functionality. So there's a lot of use cases for these particular hosted payment pages. They can be in POS systems, shopping carts, custom checkouts, websites, for donation pages, etc. They can be used in mobile applications so that the cardholder data is not typed into the mobile application, but a hosted payment page is used as well. And they can be sent in email, so you can send out links to people to pay, such as invoices, or even just pages where you're asking them to click here and make a payment. Could be a donation, could be a specific payment for a specific customer. All that is possible, so you can send the entire session to a customer via email or SMS text. A hosted payment page itself is comprised of a few feature functionality that you want to be aware of. The first is the form itself. It's the graphical wrapper around all of the fields. The fields are the data that collect that collect information on the form, and they can be in a variety of formats, and they can be just for the payment gateway, or the fields can have nothing to do with the payment gateway, and it's information that you'd like returned back to your system. If you want to prompt for what type of car they have and the color of their hair, you can do all of that by simply adding fields on the page. The form itself also has the ability to configure how you want approval or declines handled. If it's a point of sale system, you'd want an unlimited number of declines, because it's up to the cashier to decide when they're done taking different cards from the cardholder. If it's a web-facing page that goes to anonymous users, instead you might want to take a different approach and not allow any maybe two declines or something like that before you stop taking cardholder data. Finally, receipts. Receipts can be emailed and customized to the consumer or the merchant. You have the option to do both. The secure session is how you control and monitor what's happening in the page. So the create session call is where you would provide any pre-population information you'd like, and it returns a unique session ID. Then you display the session with show session containing the unique ID you got back from create session. That way, for each individual set of data that you sent over, you get back a session ID that you can display. Check session is a way to call from your system out to monitor what's happening on the page as the consumer or the cashier fills out the information. Great for POS systems. Alternatively, it can be used in web systems as well, but they typically use a post back, where the information is posted back from our form back to the other web system. But there's two different ways to do that. We'll cover that in the transaction flow. Anytime that you sent a session out via email with send session, you can cancel that session if you decided you want to change the amount or something like that. So you can send one via SMS, text, or email, and you can cancel it anytime you want to stop that page from being able to be used any further. And multi-sessions is the endpoint that replaces show session if you're using a template designed for multiple customers, like a donation page. Actually, I'm going to pause here for a moment. and I'm going to bring up our website and show you the developer entry points. So when we talk about our developers websites, it lets you investigate the hosted payment page, see how they work, evaluate which transaction flow might be best for you, and we'll cover transaction flows in a minute. But there's also the reference library. All of these sessions entry points can be accessed either by direct URLs on our web server, or they're wrapped in library calls, so it's your choice. Here's the things you can send in. The user fields are all the fields that aren't specific to payment processing, or maybe have specific data for industry specifics, hotel check-in and checkout date, or as I mentioned before, the color of their hair or the type of car they drive. You can put all of that information in your create session call if you so desire, and you can get it back from your check session call or from your post back, and we'll show you how to do that a little bit later. But the reference section of the developer.slimcity.com library gives you all these entry points and everything that it takes to call them, invoke them, and how they work. Here's a very simple hosted payment page. It doesn't have a lot of information on it. It's just designed to capture the card number and expiration date. In this case, you might be tokenizing the card number so you can store it on file in your system. So it's a way of adding a card number to a vault. You could have sent in additional information. You can hide the amount in this case if it's just for tokenization, or it can be very simple. Just here's the amount, give me your card number, let's pay this. They can get a little fancier. Here's an example of something that might be considered a standard template, where you're asking them for their billing information and their card number information, and you can alter this to add fields, take them away, make them required or not required, whatever fits your business use case. Here's the same type form, but it's a donations page. In this case, you can see the amounts, a pull-down menu. It could have just as easily been a typable input field where they type in the amount. And since it's a donation page for anonymous users, you want to make sure that fraudsters aren't using it maliciously to type in stolen card numbers to see if they're still good. And in that case, we put a reCAPTCHA on here from Google, which is simply an option you check on the form, and we'll automatically add that for you. Here is a true tokenization page with nothing else on it but just the card number, and that would give you back the token you could store in your database with the expiration date. And here's a checkout page where the information, instead of being input fields, is pre-filled on the form, although they left the address as editable just in case the merchant would like, or the consumer would like the information to go to a different email address when they put in their payment information. Now, they can be very fancy. This is actually a SlimCD invoice. In our built-in invoicing system, we use our own hosted payment page. In this case, a lot of these fields are mail merged onto the form, which is easy to do with our template design. In our templates, you put little mail merge fields, and when you create the session, you supply all these values, and everything you see as text gets mail merged on. It doesn't have to be fields on the form. It can be added just through mail merge. These on the bottom are actually fields on the form, and most of these get sent for payment processing on the bottom. None of the ones that are mail merged on do. So you've got a variety of ways that you can prompt the user for information, display fields, send fields to the session, and graphically design the form to be as complex as you'd like it to be. And when we speak about graphics, here's an actual kiosk form that's used with a secure session in a popular national merchant. They have a standalone kiosk. When it comes to the payment part, this is what their CSS experts have been able to do with the hosted payment page, the nice rounded corners and all the look and feel that they've added to it that goes along with the theme of their company. So the graphical modification capability and the technical implementation of the architecture for what fields you're collecting and how you want to handle data is very sophisticated. You do not have to use all that sophistication, but it's there for those cases where you do need to use it. So let's talk about the transaction flow. In this case, we have a simple shopping cart, or it could be a donation page. But in this case, let's say it's a shopping cart that's going to pre-populate with a create session call over to the SlimCD servers, and it's going to send in the amount and whatever information, maybe an order number so we can reconcile everything easily, and that's going to come back to the shopping cart with that session ID. Then it simply redirects the consumer's browser to a URL that displays the form. At the end, in this particular case, it sends an email receipt out, displays the email receipt on the screen, and that's the end of the process. Like I said, great for a donation page. You could simply just redirect to the payment page and get the receipt, but here you're going to pre-populate, redirect, and get a receipt. In a true fancier shopping cart implementation, you'd like to know if the transaction was approved or declined. So in this case, the form has a postback URL. So we create the session like we did in step 1 before. We redirect to the URL. The payment data goes to Slim CD. When that transaction is approved or declined, a postback occurs back to the shopping cart, and that postback provides the approved or declined information with the AVS and the CVV2 and the token and all the information standard to a Slim CD reply. If you want to learn more about all the information that's available, check out our direct connection integration. It shows you a lot of that, and it's also available in the website I brought up before in a process transaction request or in a check session callback. You can see all the fields you get back. So postbacks have the similar things as check session, and you can even add your own fields that you liked sent back as part of the postback and sent back as part of the redirect or the check session, and we'll show you how to do all that. There'll be some, there are some independent videos that show you how to do some of that stuff. So once this is all done and the consumer has put in a card number and gotten approval, it will redirect back to the shopping cart. If you set that up in the form, it will redirect back so you can display a thank you page or continue shopping or however you want to continue that process. So it gives you back a postback URL and a redirect URL. So it's 2 ways to get information back to your system. If your point of sale system, there's nothing to redirect back to because you're a client software, maybe running on a mobile phone or on a point of sale, and you don't have something to redirect back to because you're a client, not an actual server. So in that case, the flow is similar. The point of sale system would create a session, get back a session ID, and then it would launch Internet Explorer or use a built-in web control to display the form. And as the consumer or the cashier fills out the form, that information is going to Slim CD, and the POS system calls check session in a polling loop to poll and ask, is this session completed? What's the status of this functionality? So that when the transaction is finally approved or declined, the point of sale system knows. There's no inbound calls to the point of sale system. There's only outbound calls that let all this functionality occur. You can do the same thing with a server, but we recommend using the postback primarily, although we do have some implementations that prefer the check session for a variety of architectural reasons. So I've talked a lot about the flow control here and give you some options on how to do it. Well, the page itself specifies the color, the images, the graphics, headers and footers, the types of payments you're accepting, how you handle the declines, how it handles duplicates for you automatically, and you can specify the server-server transaction flow, and that is available inside our website. We'll take a quick second and we'll log into slimcd.com. I will log in with one of our test accounts. And there is a video on all the test accounts, so be sure to check that out to let you know all the test accounts for all the merchant types. In this particular case, I'm going to click on Sessions and Manage Forms. Now under here, I will have a list of all my forms. This particular test account happens to have quite a few forms, so it takes a minute to load. And as you can see, there are all kinds of forms here. So I'm actually going to pick up one of these forms. I don't know what it looks like. I can show the form to see it. Oh, it's a pretty simple form. Looks like one of the ones I used in my example. And I'll come back and let's edit the form itself. So if you want a title on the form and some background and some logos and some graphics, there's lots of options here on the colors, etc. There's also an advanced settings tab. If we look inside the advanced settings tab, you can give your form a name. That way when you're calling create session, you're calling the form by a name that means something to you, and you can keep your own versions in the form. That's very important because if you make modifications to it, the form itself will have those version numbers in it, and you can actually export the form designs as XML and reload them in the system later, etc. You're specifying the types of cards, how you want to handle keyed, swiped, all kind of different ways to take different input, whether it's got a keypad on the screen. I'll actually physically show you a little keypad that the consumer would click on to type in card numbers instead of an editable field. But if you want an editable field, or if you want a keypad, those options are available. How you're going to make them specify the cards, whether we detect it automatically, whether it's a pull-down list, whether it's just a graphical image of the card brands across the top. If it's a cashier, you probably want to show a single HTML input field month, year, so they can type very fast, or if it's a mail order house. If, on the other hand, it's a consumer-facing, you want 2 separate pull-downs so that they don't get it wrong and they don't type in 13 for a year, for a month, for instance. So how you design the payment input portion is all done right in here. How you want CVV2 handled, Same for checks. There's a lot of information for checks. Here's your decline handling, and here's your post back and redirect URLs. So here you give the URL where to post back as transactions are processed, approved or declined. It lets you know automatically, and once you've gotten to the approval or the final decline, if you specified only allow 3 declines, when they get to the 3rd decline, it's going to redirect back to the website saying, okay, I'm done. So here's where you put the post back and your redirect URLs. How you handle receipts, whether you want them shown, emailed, etc. And you can send them to the consumer, to the merchant, or both. And how the submit button looks. So there's a lot of fancy information here about form flow, all contained in here. If we look at the fields on the form, this doesn't have any fields. We can add a field, and there's a variety of things we can do with fields. So let's continue with the slideshow. Oh, here's a sample one that actually prompts for some consumer information. You can add custom fields to this. This is a very simple one. It had a graphic on the top. For some reason, the graphic didn't show. So here are the fields that I was talking about. Here's when fields are created. You can specify they go before or after the cardholder data, and there's a lot of editing feature functionality in a field that lets you specify a great variety of options for the fields. And again, check out the second video, but you can specify whether it comes back on the post back, the redirect, whether this happens to be the email receipt to use, etc. We'll go over all these fields in detail in that other video, but I wanted to give you an idea that all that functionality is available. We kind of covered this already, the options for the form and the developer's website. In the developer's website, we do have all of the documentation for sending and receiving session information, emailing a session. You can send a session to email a link to the session to your consumers or SMS text it. All that is available in here. We also have in our developers download page, which I believe is, oh, here's all the APIs. I covered a lot of those. And the sample code is all covered in there as well. Here's the download page. Under the zips, there's a secure sessions zip file, and I'm going to take a minute to show that to you because there's a lot of great information in that zip file. If you open up the zip, here's the zip, and we go inside it, you'll have pause samples and web samples and a full document that describes a lot of the information I've discussed in here, but it gives you a nice printable, if you'd like to print it out and look at a manual. It shows you XML examples of what you're sending and what you're getting back. So all the information you could possibly want on hosted payment pages and secure sessions is in here, including the details for the forms that we've edited, etc. That's all available in here as well. So I do suggest, if you're serious about customizing and integrating these things in a lot of systems, you should download this and look at the pause and web examples. If instead it's a simple donation page or it's a very simple process, you probably don't need to get into a lot of that. Just using the website itself is fairly self-explanatory, and you should be able to get through a lot of that. But I wanted to make sure that you were aware that that full secure sessions zip file was there. And again, all of these samples all do support secure sessions. So if I go back to, say, PHP, I can actually use the sample picker. And in the JavaScript sample picker, I have all the secure session samples right in here, which will show you, let's say, check session, all the fields needed to check a session, send a session, how to send one by email or SMS text, etc. And those are in all of our libraries. So .NET, PHP, that exists everywhere. And make sure to take advantage of the download page, the samples page, and the developer resource with the documentation, as well as that SDK. And we've covered a lot of material here in hosted payment pages because setting them up and getting it right the first time is important enough that I want to make sure you had the information you needed to be successful. And of course, we're always here to help you as you go through that process. So we do have the links that I've provided here. Make sure you'll take a look at developer.slimcity.com and stats.slimcity.com/developer/downloads to get all those download samples. Thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate you watching this information on hosted payment pages and secure sessions.